Hi, everyone.
Blog Talk Radio.
I hope you all are doing well today. I want to welcome everyone that is listening to the Worldwide Writers Broadcast. This is the broadcast where I help authors gain exposure for their publications. I am author and publisher Victoria Sheffield. I am excited today because I have a remarkable guest who just happens to be the author of the book titled A Look Back in Time. Now, I want to share just a few things about him. I won't read his entire bio for the sake of time, but he is the oldest son of a career veteran of the U.S. Army. He's traveled throughout the U.S. and Europe during childhood. The places he's traveled, the people he met, and the stories he remembers are all shared in this memoir. I want to introduce to my audience Arthur Bernard Lee.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sheffield, for that introduction. I am very happy to be here with the audience, and I'm looking forward to sharing stories from A Look Back in Time, memoir of a military kid in the 50s.
Wow. Awesome. You know what? Sounds like this is going to be a ride. Sounds like it's going to be really exciting, and I'm just ready to hear. Thank you so much again for joining us. So just feel free to tell us a little bit more about you. And I want to ask you a question. Now, do you reside in Conyers, Georgia?
Yes, I do. It's in southeast Atlanta, and we've been here about 11 years.
Awesome. I always like to ask that if I don't read that in the bio, because sometimes you never know, people in the community may want to reach out to you. And so tell us just a little bit more about you, and tell us a little bit more about the inspiration that allowed you to write this book.
In 1982, which is a few years ago, I was asking the question to myself, what was my purpose? And at that time, in attempting to answer that question, I began to record some of the information and stories that I recall from my travels with my dad, who was in the military. I wrote about 56 pages longhand, and then I put that aside. I did not finish or take up that work again for 31 years. When I finally got the opportunity to complete the first book in my memoir series, I was so thrilled. I wrote the book to share with my children, my grandchildren, my nieces, my nephews, my grandnieces and nephews, the family history. Because I was a military kid, we call military brat, which is a nice term that we use for military kids, we traveled and we moved from place to place. And so having a home that you can come back to, and therefore a history that everybody in the family can be familiar with, was difficult.
You know what? I'm just sitting here thinking, and I think that it's a wonderful thing to have someone that is thinking about the generations ahead. And it's so amazing. My mind automatically thought about what happened with the story of Roots, where someone was generous enough to say that the generations to come to know about our history. So I want to just, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you paused for a second, but I want to take this opportunity right now to just salute you for that, because what you have done is so amazing that your children's children and even their children will be able to look back and read about you after you are long gone. So that is just amazing, so amazing. So you can go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the stories in your book.
Well, thank you. As a military kid, the stories that I recall and the places that I visited and the people I met make for a rich tale. And I really enjoyed writing this. I'd like to begin by reciting a poem that I wrote to rather tell you why I believe this particular venture was important. If you knew your light was dimming but had memories left to share, would you take the time to write them or wonder who would care? If you found your past was fading and your present fleeting too, would you capture it for those you love as I have tried to do? We are here for precious moments. Very soon we will be gone. So I choose to share my memories. Maybe they will linger on. With that in mind,
I'm at awe. I'm at awe. Wow. I mean, you have basically pre-left your memories behind. That is, I've interviewed authors after authors, and I find it quite amazing. Even when back when I first met you at the Authors Expo, and I remember you stood up and said a few things about your publication, and I remember thinking to myself, what he's done is very unique. So, wow, that is just, I'm just amazed. I'm just so, just listening to you as an author myself, it's almost as if it's making me want to, write something that I know that the generations up under me can go back and take a look at. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, thank you. The life of a military kid. When I was a child, we were always moving from one place to another. Making friends was something I looked forward to with an uneasy anticipation. My father was in the military, and moving seemed to be what he did best. If you moved frequently, you were different. We always had been asked when we got to the next place, where are you from? This question hid the unspoken one, what are you doing here? I answered that question hundreds of times, feeling each time the way it feels when you've lost your way. I became good at answering the question. I have always been a fast talker, a quick learner, and a hell of a runner. My mom taught me to stand up for myself and never let anyone push me around. I wasn't supposed to fight, but if anyone put their hands on me, I had her permission to straighten them out. My earliest memory of moving in the military was when we lived in Kansas. It was 1950. The war had ended in 1945, and that's my birthday, June 1945. I was 5 years old when my father left near the end of World War II to rejoin the Army. He had been in the military, in the Marines during the war, and he came out. We lived in Big Island, Virginia, and Big Island is up in the hills near the mighty James River. In fact, that's the same James River that runs down to Jamestown that was founded in 1607. But my dad, who left service and came to Lynchburg, Virginia, tried to find a job there, and then he tried to find a job in Richmond, Virginia, and he couldn't find work which paid anywhere near what he was earning in the military. So he sacrificed for our family by rejoining the military. He joined first time at 15. He lied about his age. He went into the Marines. The second time when he rejoined, he went into the Army. He stayed in the Army nearly 30 years. And for that, we owe him a debt that we could never repay. He went into the service during the Korean conflict, which was a war, but we started calling wars different names rather than wars. So the Korean conflict, my dad left. We were unable to go with him because you couldn't take your dependents with you to Korea. I remember staying with my grandparents. my grandfather was a farmer, and he had a large spread there in Big Island, Virginia. And he had a nice set of animals. He had a cow. He had some hogs. And he had lots of vegetables that he grew. So, following the Depression in the 30s, which carried over after the war, farm, or my grandfather's farm, was a godsend for them. They were able to survive. My grandfather also slaughtered hogs for the white people who could afford them, because most people couldn't afford to keep hogs. And so he would get the spare parts from the hogs, and that would be some of the meat that the family would be able to eat. He was a hunter. He trapped squirrels. He hunted raccoons, and he hunted possum, and he fished in the mighty James River. Now, all these things I recall about my grandfather. My mother told me, and she told my sister and I about our grandparents. And it was important that she did, because my grandfather died 5 weeks after we moved to Virginia. So I was very young and was never able to fish with him. Mm-hmm. But I recall all the stories that my mother told me about her father. During those times, it was difficult. The work that you could get was hard to find. There were a lot of people who rode the train from town to town, and they would ask for jobs. They'd knock on doors and ask for day work in order to earn a living to send money back to their family or just to support themselves. We lived across from the railroad tracks, and so we would take a bucket and we'd go down to the railroad tracks and we'd look for black gold. Now, black gold are pieces of coal that have fallen off the coal cars that run along the railroad tracks. And we would take apples, peaches, and pears that we got from the farm, and when the train went by, we would throw up a peach, a pear, or an apple, and one of the people sitting on the coal car would kick some coal off so that we would have something to harvest to take back so our grandmother could fire up the stove, cook dinner, and warm the house. If you've ever shared your lunch with a person that you know is hungry, then you know how grateful we were to receive the coal that was pushed off the coal car by a person whom we were able to give an apple or a pear in return. That was from A Look Back in Time, memoir of a military kid in the 50s, Life on the Farm.
Wow. You know, that was so amazing. And, you know, the things that you learn, I say this all the time to people, when we pick up a book and read, because I honestly had no idea that there were people that would actually kick the coal off the train or whatever to help you all, that you all would be able to eat. I mean, it's, you know, being brought up in my day and time, we never saw that type of thing, you know. So it's very educational. Not only is it a part of your history, but a person in my age group could really pick up that book and could really learn something about that particular time. So that is quite amazing. Now, I want to ask you, because I did take a look at your information, but I can't quite remember. Now, do you have more than one publication that you want to talk about?
Yes, I do. In this instance, I have 2 books that I've completed in a memoir series that planned for 4 books. I'm in the process of writing book 3 now.
Awesome.
So I have the first book that I've been reading from is the first in the series. And yes, I do have a second book. I don't intend to cover that one this evening.
Okay. That sounds great. That sounds just fine. I just want to just thank you so much for even taking your time out of your schedule to talk about your publication and to be able to share, because truly, truly you are a light to other authors such as myself in being able to share a part of your history with not only your family but to us. Amazing. Now, let me ask you another question, because sometimes this helps. Do you ever take speaking engagements?
Yes, I do. I belong to Toastmasters.
Awesome.
And I have not joined the Toastmasters here in Georgia, but I did belong to the Toastmasters in New Jersey. So I do speaking engagements.
Awesome. Okay. And I was asking because I know with a lot of the authors, they are also speakers. And I noticed that when they take the speaking engagements, it actually helps them to sell more copies of their books. And that's the reason why I asked you earlier, did you reside in Conyers, Georgia? Just in case someone is listening and they may want to ask you about doing a speaking engagement here in our city. And so I try to do everything I can just to open up doors and channels to help us authors be able to sell and promote that we do. So is there anything else that you want to share about your publication? I know one thing that you can do, just in case someone is listening, you can let them know if they want to purchase a copy of your book, how and where they can do that. Also, maybe you would want someone listening to connect with you on social media. Maybe you have a website view. So let us know how we can connect with you that way.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sheffield. Yes, I do have a website, www.bernardleejr.com, BERNARDLEEJR.com. So you can learn about me, and there is a phone number on the website. There's an email address on the website and a contact number on the website. And you can purchase a copy of book 1 or 2 on the website. Or if you'd like a signed copy, you can email me. And you can email me at Bernie, BERNIE, at BernardLeeJr.com. Bernie at BernardLeeJr.com. Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to share that information. I'm also a teacher. I was an electrical engineer who graduated from Howard University in Washington, D.C., and went to work for AT&T in New Jersey for 37 years. While I was there, I taught SAT prep classes for minority students who were interested in taking STEM courses in high school and becoming part of the technology classes that they had to take in college. So I did that. In addition to that, here in Conyers, I've taught summer school. I taught at Hills Academy this past summer, a 6-week class from the book. I have a curriculum for the book. It's a reading curriculum. I had 40 boys, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and 10th grade. And in order to get them to enjoy reading, I needed a hook. So what I did was I read them about the story in the book about playing marbles. It was a story which was interesting for them. And as I expected, not many of them had ever played marbles. Not many of them had ever held a marble. Ordered marbles from Amazon. I ordered Steelies, ordered boulders, ordered peewees, all those special marbles, ordered cat's eye marbles, yellow and green and blue and azure. And I brought them to class. And we struck an agreement. If they did the work, read the stories, participated in class, At the end of
Mm-hmm.
class, in the afternoon, we'd play marbles. We played marbles for 6 weeks. I have never seen 8th, 9th, and 10th graders get down on a carpet because we drew a big circle with chalk in the room.
Wow.
And we get down on the carpet, and here are all these guys down on the carpet shooting marbles. And each team would take their turn to play. And it turned out to be one of the nicest things that we've done because it's a game I enjoyed when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. So it sounds like to me you have a way with our youth as well. And I love when you say that you actually taught them using a curriculum from stories that you actually pulled from your book. So that is so amazing because I saw an author about a week ago during an online author expo, and she actually did a series on how to create a course from the books that you sell. And I thought that was quite amazing. And then you would say something about a curriculum. So I have a question for you. Have you ever thought about taking your book, since you are an educator, and coming up with like a reading and comprehension workbook to go along with your storybook?
Yes, I had considered that. It's a project that I haven't undertaken yet.
Okay.
I had exercises for each of the sections that we reviewed from the book, and I would have to expand that for full curriculum. And of course, a workbook of exercises and vocabulary, which I also had, would be a really nice idea.
It sure would. It really would, because in the back of my mind, what I'm ultimately thinking about is how can us as authors sell mass amounts of our books in group settings. So that was just like a thought and a light bulb that it just came across my mind. So, wow. Well, I want to, Mr. Bernard Lee. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go. Thank you for sharing that. It just occurred to me that that's something that an author might hand out at a gathering of readers, and encourage them to share that with their young people, and in return contact me if you're interested in a class.
I know that's right. A lot of people I notice are doing the workshops. And the workshops are really helping the authors sell their publications. So it seems like we have a whole lot of possibilities in the area, if we just sort of brainstorm and come up with a unique marketing plan that we can actually sell a lot of our books. So I want to thank you, Mr. Bernard Lee. I'm not going to hold you much longer, but I want to thank you again for just taking the time out of your schedule and to be able to share your thoughts about your publications, because it's one thing when we see that cover of that book, but it's another thing when you kind of go in depth to let us know what inspired you to write it, your inspiration, and just telling us a little bit more about it. But I have one last question before I go that I meant to ask you, actually, and I forgot. Was this the first thing that you've ever written in life? Was this your first experience with writing when you wrote that particular book? Or
no, it was not. I have always written. My mother is 93 years old. She writes poems. She's published a few books of poetry. My sister, who passed on in 2005, was also a poet, and she published her own 2 copies of her own work. So it kind of runs in our family. I received an award when I lived in Germany for a publication that I did for the U.S. Army and in a competition. And that kind of spurred me on to do some more writing. I have written in my college anthology, my high school yearbooks. I've written poetry for all of those. I was a writer for the local newspaper. I was a sports writer for a small local newspaper for a while. And again, that gave me access to writing and practice in writing. So it's a art that I had, and I just needed to share my stories in a form that others could read them too.
Oh, that is awesome, awesome. And the fact that it seems to be something that runs in the family, I find that quite amazing too. Well, thank you so much again. We're getting ready to end, Mr. Lee, but, you know, as a writing coach and publisher, I always want to encourage any that are listening to share your story and to just never feel that you are someone that cannot write. And if you are an author, feel free to join our Facebook group titled Writers Network and Book Club. Now, if you have any concerns at all, feel free to email me at SheffieldVictoria39@gmail.com. This has been amazing. Mr. Lee, you have a marvelous evening. All that are listening, you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening as well. And until next time, goodbye.
Thank you.